You know, when we talk about India's higher education system, we're not just talking about a bunch of colleges. We're really talking about the engine room for the entire nation's future. Its job? To churn out the next generation of thinkers, innovators, and leaders who are literally going to shape the country's destiny. So let's dive into the massive scale of it all, the really deep-seated challenges, and the ambitious reforms that are trying to transform this colossal system. To really get your head around the scope of this, just look at the numbers. We're talking about over 1,000 universities, more than 45,000 colleges, and a truly staggering 43.3 million students. This makes it one of the largest, most complex educational ecosystems on the entire planet. The potential here? I mean, it's just immense.
And that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? The central question we're really digging into here. Can a system of this size actually deliver on its promise? Can it take all that demographic potential and power India's incredibly ambitious goal of becoming a developed nation, a Viksit Bharat, by 2047? The stakes? Well, they really couldn't be higher.
But here's the thing. Despite its incredible scale and all that ambition, the system is showing some pretty serious signs of strain. So before we can even talk about solutions, we have to get real about the deep-rooted problems, the cracks in the foundation that are holding everything back.
Get this number, 40%. Let that sink in for a second. That is the faculty vacancy rate in the IITs, India's absolute top-tier engineering schools. A number that high tells you there's a huge challenge in getting and keeping top talent. It's a direct threat to the quality of education when you have a severe shortage of teachers, especially in your best institutions. It impacts everything.
And here's another critical figure for you. This one's about innovation. India spends just 0.7% of its GDP on research and development. And what's more, most of that tiny slice comes from the government. There's very little coming from private industry or the universities themselves. This kind of low investment basically starves the whole ecosystem of the money it needs for big discoveries. And it keeps India playing catch-up in the global tech race.
And all of this, well, it leads to a pretty startling real-world problem. Only 55% of graduates are actually considered employable. That means nearly half the students coming out of the system might not have the skills that modern companies are looking for. It just points to this massive gap between what's taught in university and what the fast-moving economy actually needs.
And the problems, they don't stop there. The gross enrollment ratio, which is the percentage of young people in higher ed, is still pretty low, just over 28%. There's a huge digital divide. Only about a third of institutions even have proper internet. We're seeing more and more colleges pop up, but quality isn't keeping pace. Less than 21% are properly accredited. You add in weak links to industry and almost no international students or faculty, and you start to see a system that's under immense pressure from every single direction.
So, with a picture that looks like that, what's the plan? Well, faced with these massive challenges, the government has laid out a pretty comprehensive reform blueprint. And we're not talking about small fixes here and there. This is a multi-pronged strategy aimed at a complete overhaul of the sector.
Let's just do a quick run-through of the key plays. Right at the top, you've got the National Education Policy, or NEP 2020. That's all about making education more holistic and flexible. Then there's RUSA, which is focused on funding and shaking up state universities. The Anusandhan National Research Foundation is designed specifically to pump more money into R&D. Swayam is the big digital platform giving access to courses, and the Study in India program is trying to make India a global education hub. So you see, it's a coordinated attack on all those core problems we just talked about.
Now, the undisputed cornerstone of this entire reform plan is the National Education Policy of 2020. You have to think of it as the master plan. It's not just one thing. It's this huge vision for a more well-rounded, multidisciplinary, skill-focused, and tech-savvy education system. It's really the guiding philosophy for everything else that's happening.
Okay, but a policy is just words on a page, right? Without concrete action, it doesn't mean much. So let's look at how this blueprint actually translates into specific, forward-looking actions that are designed to build that revitalized, smarter future.
It really comes down to three key pillars. First, you've got to boost research and innovation. And the way to do that is by linking universities directly with what industry and the government actually need. Second, you have to strengthen that link between industry and academia by having them design courses together and making internships a mandatory part of the deal. And third, you have to go all in on digital and hybrid learning to open up access for everyone and get around some of those infrastructure hurdles.
And beyond those core pillars, we're starting to see some really cool, innovative ideas bubbling up.
Imagine things like micro-credentials, these short, focused certifications for super in-demand skills like AI or blockchain. Or think about entire universities built around entrepreneurship, with startup incubators and VC access baked right in. And there's also this push to use India's cultural soft power, promoting traditional knowledge systems like yoga and Ayurveda on the world stage. These are the kinds of dynamic ideas that could make the whole system way more relevant.
Which, of course, leaves us with that one final, absolutely critical question. We all know India has the largest youth population in the world. That's a massive demographic potential. But potential isn't the same thing as a dividend, is it? Can this huge blueprint of reforms actually fix the cracks, build that smarter future, and turn all that potential into a real, tangible, economic and intellectual dividend for the whole country? The answer to that question is going to define India's story for the rest of this century.